everyone. Welcome to Knowledge or Nonsense. We're already talking with Elizabeth McCormick and Mr. Perkins here, president of CS Assist. And hey, bring your questions. You guys know what to do. Share this video. Bring your questions. Bring your comments. If there's something you want to ask, but you don't want someone to know you are asking it, feel free to text that to 214-717-5921. I'll get it. I'll ask it. No one ever has to know it was you, and we'll get some responses for you. So listen, we were talking, and I believe we were talking about endurance. Was it endurance before we?
Yeah, we were. Elizabeth is by far one of the hardest, most successful people in this space. Period. And that takes a lot of time and commitment. And I just wanted to know why. That's it. Why?
And my question back is, why when? Because are we talking about why when to become a helicopter pilot, or why when now doing 100, 110 speaking engagements a year on the road? Or is it why, which one do you want?
Can we go sequential? Like, let's do why with the pilot, because with the pilot, something in there had to have been some bootstrap or internal gumption. Something had to make you move that way. Let's say why get into the Black Hawk helicopter space, and then why do you continue with what you do now?
Yeah. So I was a military wife, and we were stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and which I joke about in my speeches that everybody who lives there calls it Fort Puke, because when I was there wasn't even a Walmart. There was nothing there. I mean, It was pawn shops and strip clubs and the normal, outside the base. It was not a good place. So I was miserable. I was away from home for the first time. And I had 5 years of college. I have 2 college degrees and a minor. So I have a degree in art, a minor in mathematics, and an associate's degree in engineering, and there were no jobs. And so I realized I was miserable. And I talk about that. It's at some point when you're in circumstances where you feel like nothing is in your control, you need to start looking at the things you can control. And I started really diving into what can I do? What are my options? I wanted to stay married, so that limited the options, right? I wanted to try to find a way to work together, but it just there weren't a lot of options. So finally I realized that if he could be in the Army, why can't I?
Come on.
So I decided, I decided I'm going to be in the Army too. So I, decided to be in the Army, but I didn't. He was a medic. I didn't want to do that. And I wanted a cooler job. So I had no idea what a cooler job was. So one of the big things I've done my entire life is I have researched. So I will interview people. I will ask questions. Back then we didn't have Google, right? We didn't have LinkedIn. We didn't have all these other places. So I went on to the military base and I asked people. I just said, hey, what would you do if you had to do it over again? What would you do different? And finally I kept asking, what's the coolest job? And everyone said it was a helicopter pilot. I'd be a helicopter pilot. And so I went, okay, I could do that. Didn't know it was hard. I had no idea that they were only letting women in about 13 years before that. And they were letting women in one at a time. I had no idea that out of 200 to 250 pilots, there was one woman. I didn't know any of that at that point. I just knew that something finally felt right. So that kind of started the journey. And then, I went back to research. I went to the flight line and talked to the pilots and found out what the right process and the right way of doing things was before I started doing things.
Oh, that's good. That's good on the count the cost. So you didn't just jump out there.
No, I asked a ton of questions. So, what's the best way? How can I do this? Just continuously ask questions all through the process. And even when I finally found out the process. I went to the recruiter, was the next step. And the recruiter said no. Like, I wanted to go, I knew what to say. I could say it with confidence, right? Because I'd done the research. And when I went into the recruiting station, he was like, you can't do that.
So, okay, before we get into the mission being bigger than you, right there, can we just stay there?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the lessons? Because I know you speak and help so many people now. I mean, ABC to Featured in Wall Street, you've been there. What are some of the lessons that you help people with when you're faced with someone else's biases or someone else's own limitations that they try to impose on you?
Yeah. So I talk about being in your potential zone, not a comfort zone. So, because people look at me now and they're like, oh, well, of course you stood up to them. Of course you asked questions. Of course you did. I'm like, yeah, but what you don't realize, what most of my audiences don't realize, is I grew up really shy, like horribly, painfully, awkwardly shy. And it was not comfortable for me to say, it wasn't comfortable for me to ask questions. It wasn't comfortable for me to talk to strangers. It wasn't comfortable for me to walk into a recruiting station, be told no, and question with curiosity and ask why not. Why can't I? And he said things like, well, you need perfect eyesight. And I'm like, huh, got that. You need perfect physical condition. And now I say I used to have that. Right. So you need a college degree. I'm like, I almost have 3. I had an answer for everything he asked me, and yet he still kept saying no. And in that case, what most of us would assume was bias, it was gender bias, and because you were a girl. By the time I really drilled into the why not to get to the root reason, he didn't know how to do the paperwork.
Wow.
Yeah. He didn't know how to do his job. So, what would have happened if I had walked in and I believed him? For me now, it's about questioning with curiosity and finding out what's really going on. Because if we're in our potential zone and our belief in what we're supposed to do or the possibilities of what's coming next, and then we cave, like if we believe someone else when their limitations, like your belief in yourself and your abilities needs to be bigger than other people's lack of belief. And that's not easy. It's simple, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy. So how do we shore up our beliefs in ourselves? How do you, and the fact is none of us have a cheerleader who walks around behind us all day long going, yay, you could do it. Yes, you can. Like, not 24/7. That's in our head. That's the game of the mind, right? That we have to cheer ourselves on. And the fact is, people want to follow people who are confident. People want to follow people who are, I say confidence leads to competence and drives to excellence. Because you can't get to excellence without the confidence underneath it. You can't get to excellence without the competence of what you do and knowing you know what you're doing. So
interesting. What was that time span from when you first walked into the recruiter's office to actually becoming a helicopter pilot? What was the time span?
Probably 8 months, 9 months.
Wow.
So it went from the recruiting station to going to the flight doctor and getting my flight testing. From the flight testing, had to take the skills testing, the flight aptitude skills test. They call it the fast test. It's really slow. So I had to take all this testing, and then I had to take the regular entrance physical on top of the flight physical, which I don't get because the flight physical was way harder. I had to go through and talk to, I had to do an interview process with a panel of higher officers that basically interviewed me to see if I was a good fit, and got ranked and scored for that. Then it all goes to the Pentagon. The Pentagon has a selection board once a month to determine who gets the spots in the nation. And that selection board, the first month, I was a non-select. I didn't get selected the first month. And they don't tell you why, right?
Wow.
I was told later that it was because they just didn't have any spots, but it doesn't matter. Your packet only goes up to 2 boards. And so I was on the second board when I got one of the 2 spots in the nation.
Wow.
And I didn't know there were only 2 spots in the nation. I didn't know that. I found that out after I got through into flight school. So I found out later that there were only 2 spots in the nation.
So no short list, just curiosity, perseverance,
Research,
and determination. Like I'm still just sitting here. Thank you. I just got a whole check, a whole reset. I'm in a program right now where we're doing a reset. I facilitated, but I just got a whole reset because I was like, that's probably his bias. You know, Louisiana, a man, you're a female. I had given it to him. And it was none of that. It was his cover up of ignorance. He didn't know how to do it. So
he didn't know how to do his own job. You know, and how many times do we come up against that? Do we come up where we assume it's something and it's not, it's something else? And that's our biases, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, I got a whole check. There's a big check mark right here. You can't see it because it says something else, but I appreciate it. I love it. I love learning.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Elizabeth, have you ever bumped into, engaged with that recruiter in your career? No. Interesting.
It doesn't work like that. So now when I got into flight school, there was gender bias. So I went through basic training first, and then after basic training, I went straight to Warrant Officer Candidate School. So back then, Warrant Officer Candidate School was one of the tougher schools they were letting women into, and there was no male or female standard. It was a Warrant Officer standard, one standard that all the women had to meet, and it was not ours. So we started that course with 7 women, and only 2 of us finished. So because of the physicality, because we had to run 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles in boots, in gear at the men's pace, not ours. So we had to do, push-ups. At the end of that 6-week course, I could do 83 push-ups in 2 minutes. Used to be really buff. Not anymore. I can't do that anymore. Right. But it was what I had to do. Like I had to push myself harder physically because you started not, if you fell out of a run. So if you lagged back in a run, like strike 1, like all it took was 3 strikes, you were out. And it was non-negotiable. So I pushed myself harder physically than I'd ever pushed. Like it really, I will tell one thing from that is every single one of you watching, listening here you have more depth and more fortitude in you than you ever realize until you're pushed to those situations where you're pushed to the wall.
Yeah. I agree with that. Just, it's almost like I want to say like the physical trainer or whatever, when they push you to failure, but life does that. And adversity can be a really good coach if we'll let it be. So,
but which leads us to our next transition. All right. Where did you pull that endurance from? Because although everyone has that potential to tap in, many don't tap in. So where did you pull that endurance from? Where does it come from? What's that?
So for me, it circled back into that potential zone, right? I looked out at the helicopters as I was researching it, and I had the vision of myself out on that flight line. And when you have a vision, when you know something is possible, like our job is just not to mess it up, right? It's not to mess it up. It's our job to stand true to that vision and believe in it and have confidence in it and drive it forward. But what happens is we listen to other people's, little voices that happen that tell us, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? And stand in the way. or it might be our family, right? It might be like, I looked at my family wasn't super supportive of me going in the military. My family was like, wait, now I played college volleyball. I had athleticism, and I had this college, and I did, so it's not like I didn't have skills, but they were still like, wait, you?
Okay. Because you were so shy. You had mentioned that you were painfully shy growing up.
Yeah, that was part of it. I think it was for them, it was like a, woman going into the military kind of thing. With that, my dad was Army before I was born, and there's this whole perception that it was hard, and and I was like, there was literally nothing else. I mean, I'm working in a pizza place after all this college degree, and if anyone's in food service, love you. Like we need people in food service, right, and everything, but I knew it wasn't. It's like having this itchy feeling. It's like having this itchy feeling where your skin isn't fitting right, where you just know you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not, it's not right, and something's not right. And I had to spend some introspection time thinking through, like, okay, what isn't right? What isn't going right? The marriage wasn't going great. That's a whole nother story. But what could I change? Like, what could I do different? And this was it. This was it for me. So where did the endurance come from? It's that belief, that this is what I was supposed to do. This was it. And that belief in that was more than I believed the recruiter, than I believed the flight instructor, who later did try to fail me because of gender bias. Little girl, you don't belong here. It was more important for me to have that belief and stay true and a little stubborn than being shy, than listening to someone else, than to anything else. So, it's all in here, right? There wasn't anyone. I mean, no one was standing behind me saying, yay, you can do it. I didn't have that. I mean, I didn't have, like, people ask me, like, who is your mentor? I didn't have one. I was my mentor. I mentored myself. I mentored in my head. I read books and found positiveness in other ways to overcome the negativity that everyone was giving me, because it was all in me.
Yeah. Man, you remind me, there's a lady I know right now, and she researches everything, but she does things, and she has several businesses, and she's kind of like, she's her own mentor. She's like she figures it out, and she doesn't figure it out because of handshakes or because she knew somebody who did this and did that and put her here. Now, maybe those things that come, but yeah, that's amazing. I see Arlene is saying your pursuit is amazing. Sharon said it's called not settling for okay. That's and right. I just love how you said, see yourself. We're doing this reset. This is so timely. I'm going to have my entire group listen to this. I'm going to pull a teacher and be like, listen to this, because we've talked about it. You have to see yourself. You can't see yourself just out of other people's language. You have to see yourself doing the thing that you want to do, and you have to worry about who's in your ear. You can't let just anything in there. Man, it's amazing. I'm just amazed.
It is.
Go ahead, Lloyd.
No, please go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was going to say, you don't have to believe what other people believe.
You don't.
You don't have to let their voice in your head. You don't have to let them in. Like, your vision, your potential, your belief in yourself is yours.
Yeah. And you can carry it out. You can carry it out. Yeah.
Because I'd already researched it. I knew it was possible. There's some things that might require a law change or, a policy change or something different, but I already knew it was possible. As soon as I knew it was possible, that was it. Then it was my choice to stay firm or to succumb to other people's limiting beliefs.
So Mr. Smith said, faith plus vision equals manifestation. Faith plus vision equals manifestation. Very true. Very true. I'm so interested to learn about your transition. So, because the military wasn't your last stop, right? So you've had multiple careers. Some people are struggling 1, 2 careers. You had many careers that were successful. So I would love to speak about some of those transitions and how do we end up here today. Sharon.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll make the transition. When you came out of the military, now you speak. You speak, you coach. Let me just put it out here. Guys, this is Elizabeth McCormick. You can find her at www.pilotspeaker.com. She speaks, but she does a lot of work even behind the microphone too. You coach people, you do seminars, as seen on ABC, you were featured in the Wall Street Journal. So your platform is amazing. Your platform is deserved. Let me say that. Your platform is deserved. A lot of things are amazing. Your platform is deserved. You worked your tail off. We try to keep it PG. You worked your tail off. You showed up. You showed up consistently. I know that there were days when you felt like you didn't have to. And you made this transition. And so now where you were curious and being intentional about getting into pilot school, about succeeding, being an officer, when it was only, you said 2 out of how many? 2 out of how many women completed their program?
Well, so as pilots, at that time, out of 200 to 250 pilots, there was 1 woman.
1 woman. And then you went to a military program, military school, where there were several hundred men and only 7 women, and of the women, only 2.
Yeah.
Made it through. And now you continue your journey and see, why do you women being more important than you? Why do you speak? You've done enough that you can write books and do guest speaking things. Why do you continue to invest in the possibilities of other people, helping them find their potential zone?
Great question.
Yeah. So when I first got out of the military, I wasn't planning on getting out. I was planning on making this a career in 20 years. And after about 7 years, I was injured from negligent medical care, not a crash, not a helicopter incident. It shouldn't have happened. It was completely preventable. And it happened right before September 11th. It happened at a time that I had no idea what was coming. No one did, right? So I ended up getting out of the military in May of 2001, and I was broken. I mean, I was not just physically injured. I had lost my identity. I had lost my career. I had lost the vision for my future. I had been stalked and physically abused by another pilot for almost a year prior to going to Germany. That just really had shook my core. In some ways shook my core, but it also really got me firm in my faith. So that I was God's co-pilot in life, and I realized I was here not for me. Like I'm here for that, to be God's co-pilot. So it kind of shifted and changed everything, but I was still really broken. There's no way I could have done this then, because I didn't know who I was. I had lost that. So I get that for people. I get being on autopilot in life. I mean, for me, I went to work and I punched the clock and I did my work and I came home and was a single parent to my daughter. And I just did life. And I think there's times we have to do that just to survive, just to get through. I mean, it was probably 2 or 3 years of working like that before I finally got some self-awareness back and had healed enough to be able to be outside of me. It was really in a survival mode for a period of time. So I did 8 years of corporate, but during those last 5 years, after I increased my level of awareness, that's when I started getting involved in networking and a little side hustle business and doing some things that got me back involved with people and comfortable with people and helping people again. And at that time, as I was getting involved, people were asking me, I would never talk about being a pilot because, again, I was broken. Like, to me, that wasn't like, my patriotism was private. And I didn't want to talk about the injury. I didn't want to talk about the things that had happened to me at that point. But people kept finding out about it because it was on my LinkedIn. It was on my resume, right? So, and they found out about it. So they would call me and be like, well, will you come speak to our career day? For our kids? Will you come speak to an assembly or a youth or this or that? And I did those. I would do one and I'd get 3 or 4 more phone calls, and for other schools and other free events. And so I was doing that for a while. And then after about 6 months of doing that in and around my corporate job working, somebody calls me and is like, well, we'd like you to come speak at a luncheon. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm booked. Like, my corporate job, I was always booked, my corporate job. And they're like, well, we'll pay you. And I'm like, shut the door. I could have been getting paid this whole time. Like, what the heck? What do you mean? And they're like, yeah, we'll pay. I said, how much will you pay me? And they're like, we'll pay you $500 to speak for 45 minutes at a lunch. I'm like, well, damn, that's more than I make in my corporate job an hour, right? So I took a vacation. I took a vacation day and did that one. And from there, I got more phone calls and more requests. And then they were starting to be for paid events. And I was like, maybe I could do this, but I'm still working a corporate job. And so I was still turning a lot of them down. And then it was 3 months after that, what will you pay me in that luncheon? The 3 months later, it's January 2009. I walk into a division level meeting with the CEO from our Sweden headquarters for that corporate job I was in. That was an international contract negotiator. So traveling all over the world, negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, and walked into this meeting, and 250 people sitting there. He puts a slide up, slide 1, state of the economy. What's 2009 like? Right? Not good. Not good. Slide number 2 had 4 words on it. You're all laid off.
What?
Laid off 250 people with a 2-page PowerPoint.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So everybody, and we had no idea, running full production the day before, had no idea. Everybody is screaming, crying. And I'm sitting there going, I know what I'm supposed to do. Wow. You get that little tap. You get that little, and sometimes that tap's a 2x4. Right? But that's usually because you didn't listen to the taps before the 2x4.
Wait, so
that's an amazing story. That's amazing.
Okay, let's take a quick commercial break. This is so good because I want to know, as a transition, was there a downtime? How long did you bemoan that? But we're going to answer that when we come back. Or did you just be like, oh, okay, been here, done? Okay, I'm going to ask when I come back. When we come back. Give us about 30 seconds. I think I'm going to ask, or maybe I'm going to ask now if this computer doesn't. Yes, there we are. Yes. I'm sorry, my computer is glitching, guys.
Well,
yeah, we're just gonna go. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my computer today. So the commercial is thanks to SIPS Consults and CS Assist for supporting Knowledge or Nonsense. And now let's go back to this. How much downtime did you take? So you get this 2-page PowerPoint. I mean, most people would fuss about that, or they'll say, hey, that's not fair. Or they would go to a bar, or they would spend a couple of weeks letting everybody know their story. And what about me and poor me? What'd you do? What did you do?
So for me, they came, like, some people were gone that day, and some people had to help close the plant. And for me, they came to me and they said, Elizabeth, all those multi-million-dollar contracts you've been negotiating us in? We need you to stay 6 months and help close the plant and negotiate us out. But we don't want you to travel anymore. We want you to use this new website called Skype for all your negotiations. And because they didn't want to pay for the travel. And right. So you have you'll get the severance you get today, your salary through the 6 months, and we'll give you a giant bonus if you meet your performance metrics of negotiating us out of these contracts. So now, oh my gosh, I know my end date. I'm home every night versus traveling. So I have time to work on my website, write my book, all the things I knew I needed to do as a speaker. And then, and I can say yes to anything that's after my end date. Like, how better could that have been?
Perfect storm.
So, and I had the severance and the bonus as the launch pad to keep going.
Won't he do it?
Yeah.
Total blessings.
Won't he do it?
I agree. Wow.
Won't he do it? So it just was like this for you. It worked. I don't know what those things are called inside machines.
It was completely
out of clocks. Like, it just worked.
Do you remember your first speaking?
It was completely organic.
Okay. Elizabeth, do you
the first one ever or the first paid one?
No, the first one after the transition from your international role. Do you remember that first engagement, that first speaking engagement?
Not with that kind of like, oh, this is it, right? I remember my first really big paid one because it was the first one they found me on my website, and it was in California. And that one was amazing.
Tell us about it. What type of company, what type of environment, or even better, do you remember your topic? Do you remember what you delivered?
So I did for that one. I did yes, Brian, right on. So for that one, I did a keynote and a workshop, both. And I remember when they called me, and I just was like, okay, what's your budget? Like, trying to have a conversation before like going into negotiations with them. And they're like, oh, we couldn't possibly do more than $5,000. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, the most I've gotten so far, because I was just starting off, most I've gotten so far is 1,000. So 5,000 would be great. Right. So I was like, well, I can work with that. And but that was a huge leaping pad. I did a motivational speech, and with my motivational speech, and when I first really started off, and it still does, it kind of answer the question. It answers all the frequently asked questions. Like, wasn't like, you became a helicopter pilot. How did you become a helicopter pilot? Was it hard? What's flying like? Did you ever have, like, what are the obstacles you overcame to get there? Mm-hmm. And did you ever crash the helicopter? Like, those 5 questions is basically what I used to construct my keynote at the time, which is now really the basis for the keynote that gets me booked for large corporations and annual conferences and leadership training days and all kinds of fun things like that.
Now to date, so how many?
The breakout I did.
Go ahead, say it again.
Go ahead.
I said to date, how many speaking engagements on average do you do?
A year, I do 100 to probably 100 to 120, average about 110 events a year. And now we're adding some virtual on top of that. So actually the virtual, I'm averaging about 2 virtual in addition to that a week now, where companies and corporations are still, and associations are still doing some virtual training too. So a little bit busy. It's good. I'm happy after the slowness of 2020 and the pandemic time, but things are bouncing back that way. So that's really good. I did 153 in 2013. That was my tipping year, I call it, where everything, like the brand, the website, everything kind of just started gelling. It took a couple years there where everything started gelling. And then when it finally did, it like really did. And like, it's like everything worked. Like that year, everything worked. So 2013 was kind of a crazy year where I did 158 engagements on the road. And I was only home 3 days in the month of September. And I remember getting home from that trip, and my husband, I call him the keeper husband. My keeper husband says, too much, you know. So, but we didn't know how it was. We didn't know what it would be like when all the requests were coming in. And I started looking at it. I said, I'm going to have to travel from Seattle to Wyoming to New Orleans to Florida to DC and then back to St. Louis. Like, I didn't know what that kind of lifestyle was like in that way. And that got hard. The travel, road warriors out there, the travel can be tough.
Perkins,
doing laundry on the road.
I understand.
Yeah.
Totally understand. So, Sharon, you had a question? Because I got about a million. So I'm trying to.
Let's do this. Definitely for some of our leaders, you can never tell who's looking on LinkedIn when you're on StreamYard, and except for the comments. The comments let us know you're there. So kudos to LinkedIn. For the leaders and maybe some of the managers, you'd mentioned the mission being more important than you. When you're talking to the corporate companies, how do you get them to focus on mission? Like, do you give them tips or tools to circle back to the mission so they can maybe stay out of their own way or lead their teams? You had mentioned earlier, people want to follow a confident leader. Sometimes people are in leadership roles, but they're still not confident. Like, I don't even know how I got this role. I think about that with this podcast all the time, but are there tips?
Oh, come on.
I like it, but
So actually, I have three confidence boosting strategies that I teach in a workshop format. Those three strategies help boost our confidence. Because what happens is when we are confident in who we are, we're confident in our own personal mission of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we show up in this world, not just in our work, but in this world. When we show up like that, like everything else becomes easier, right? We're more resilient. We can handle things that happen. Believing in a vision is more important when you're not second guessing your belief in yourself.
Okay.
So having that belief in yourself is like absolutely, it's foundational. Like I said it earlier, your confidence drives your competence. So like LaWayne, when you're having a good hair day, doesn't your work go better? I mean, come on.
Does.
I got to take it.
It does. It absolutely does.
Right? But everything goes better when we feel more confident. So what if you could create, like I say create, but a lot of these have already been out there for a while, but having strategies to be more confident and control how you show up on a daily basis and what the beliefs you let in or out becomes really important to allow you to be at your best self so that you can focus on the vision. You can focus on the mission. You can focus on other things that are bigger than you.
Remove the distractions. What I hear you saying. So still part of that transitional phase, because you're moving along to, I'm already on career number 2 or 3 for you. I'm losing count. When did you decide to become an author? When did you decide to put your story out to the world to share outside of speaking?
I
think there's a lag. I don't know where it's coming from, but I do believe there.
Okay, so I was going to say there's a little lag there, so I go.
We're going to give credit to StreamYard for that, because yes, it has occurred since
he's in Africa, so I think he's allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I was asking about, when did you decide to become an author? Did you hear me? Did you hear that question?
I got it. I know what to do.
Are y'all there?
We are here. We're here. Boom. Here we are, right here. When did you decide?
So
to
okay. So what happened is when I started doing those paid speaking, the engagements and the paid speaking engagements, is people came running up to me afterwards and are like, well, wait, where's your book? I want to buy your book. And I went, better write a book. So I decided to write, and this is my first book, Pilot Method. My 20th book comes out this fall. So I still go back to this one. Yeah, 20. There we go. Yeah, my 20th book comes out this fall. I've written the big book. This has the stories I tell from stage, right? And then I've written a series of 19 other business success books that are all like 50 tips to healthy organizational culture, 50 tips to communication skills, and 50 tips to utilizing coaching skills to help empower other people to lead better. So teaching you how to use coaching language to help others. There's entrepreneurial ones, 50 tips to having a website that works, a LinkedIn profile that works, time management. So it's all like 50 tips and like super like fast
reading, man.
And then my next one is, my next one that's coming out will be a back to another big book. And it's called Just Fly.
That is a dope title. That is a great title. Just Fly.
In fact, it's right here on I say it in my speech. It's right here on one of my signs in my office. Just sky is the limit. Up above that. Wait, this way. Sky's the limit and just fly. So just fly fly means first lead yourself.
Listen, when there was a time when I was in university as an adult. I had started for social work. I went back for leadership. I just always liked leadership or found myself in leadership. Even when I didn't want to be in leadership, I would still be held accountable for what people called influence. And I was like, you can't hold me accountable for influence. Everyone's responsible for themselves. But influence is a real thing. But I bring that back to the Just Fly. I had a dean. She was an amazing dean. And I had done something called a needs assessment for a company, which is, you have to go and do these things when you're in university. You have to go and work in the community or see how you're going to do. And so with the needs assessment, I felt like it was pretty good. Of course, we all do. And then we had to say what we were going to do, like our first 12 months out of university. And I wrote what I believed. I went to Oral Roberts. I wrote what I believed. I was like, well, this is what I believe because I was in that potential zone. Now, I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I was like, no, I'm going to do this, this, and this because I just wrote what I believed. I didn't think about why I couldn't do it or what wasn't going to go right. I just wrote what I believed. And when I finished and I handed it in, she sent it back to me. And let me tell you, this was the best bit of ignorance in my life that I had, that I was ignorant. She gave it back to me. And at the top on the front page, because it was several pages, in red letters, it says, "This is pie in the sky." That's what she wrote. And I was like, yeah, because I thought she was saying it's possible. I thought pie in the sky meant I was eating well, like I thought it was a good thing. Nothing in me thought she's telling me I need to be grounded or this is unrealistic. This is unattainable. This is not even possible. You need to set your standards. It takes a while to get where you're trying to go. Basically, but I thought she was saying it was good because I got a good grade on the paper, but she let me know this is pie in the sky. I've written it correctly, But I just want to say I'm so glad that I was ignorant because by the time I realized what that saying meant, I was already doing. Like I didn't ask her about it because I thought it was a compliment. I was already doing the things that I had written. I was in another state working for the company I said I was going to work for, doing the things I said I was going to do. And so when you say just fly, God, what if I would have known what she meant? I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. What if you had believed her instead of you?
Yeah. My life is full of
Mm-hmm.
wins. I tell people all the time, my life is full of wins that if you'd have asked me when I was a kid, there's no way I thought I would have. I didn't think I wasn't going to have it. I just didn't even think in that direction because I was like, no one around me did it. So, but once those doors start opening, I have learned to just walk through. I don't always question, like, I'm glad you're here. I don't always question the yeses. I get what I'm supposed to get and I do what I'm supposed to do with it. So Luane signed off because he said his internet was challenged. And so I hear some people saying, love the title. Just Fly, definitely some smiles in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, love the title.
So fly means somebody asked fly means first lead yourself. So it's a personal and professional development book about leading yourself in a bigger and better way. And a lot of that's based on belief, confidence, how you show up, showing up when it's hard. So.
I want to know. I want to know when it comes out. Let me know. I want some. I want about 25 actually, so I can distribute.
So it'll be.
I'll keep it.
We're hoping to finish. We're hoping to finish the cover soon, and then it'll open for pre-orders. So, but we're not quite there. Probably about a month out from the cover and the subtitle being finalized. So, it's close. Right. It's close. It's like
as we
right.
How and when did you start writing a book? Not one book, but a book. I love Maul. Maul's an amazing guy. Maul is a fly guy. He is a fly. What you said, first lead yourself. He is a fly guy. Awesome. What does that creative process look like for you? Dang, how long? Maul wants to write a book.
Maul wants to write a book. So I've written so many books, Maul, that I created my own publishing company because I got tired of going through everybody else's processes. So we actually publish other people's books too, by the way. So if you want to have a conversation with me, that's fine. So no problem. So for me, like what I recommend that you do is you start journaling and start like have a notebook by the side of the bed or a note section on your phone or iPad. And you start journaling and you start capturing your ideas and stories and thoughts that you have. And then once you have some depth of those, then you do an outline and say, okay, what makes sense? What's the sequence, right? We talked earlier, Sharon, about the sequence. What's the sequence that these need to go in? You go through the sequence of, like for me, like the pilot method, I put I knew I wanted that. So I put PILOT, but I had no idea what those letters stood for. So what I did is I put on a big white sticky poster paper up. I put that up on the wall on the way to the bathroom and bedroom, the back of the house. And I put that up there and I had a marker, like sticky tack, the poster tack up there. And then every time I walked by and I thought of a word, I would add a word to it. So should P be power? Should P be purpose? Should P be, and I landed on potential and then the potential zone came from that and helped develop. So the speech and the book kind of became like that. Right. So, so for the pilot method, the piece, and this has been out, this is my 8-year anniversary. We're actually doing to kind of coordinate with the second book, we're doing a relaunch of pilot method with a new cover that'll kind of coordinate with the other cover. So pilots for potential, believing in your potential. I is implementation. Doesn't do any good to believe in your potential if you don't do something with it. L is a simple framework for leadership. How can you lead better? You lead better through communicating, aviating, and navigating. So most people go aviating. What's that? Aviating is taking action, right? Going back to implementation. And then O is optimal performance. So because life isn't about the peak, because when you have a peak, there's a valley. The average is average. So optimal performance is about maintaining and sustaining a higher level of performance over a longer period of time. So there's that endurance question again, Sharon.
Yeah.
And then T is tenacity. How do you show up? How do you just keep going when things are hard and it feels like things are against you? And how do you have that resilience, and how does that show up as tenacity? So that's the current book. And then I'm going even deeper into the second book here, the second big book of Just Fly. So plus it'll have some stories about when I worked in corporate America and speaking and other things that are not just the pilot stories.
Hey, I want to point to and give a little time to our primary audience, our audience who's been with us since day one when the pandemic first started and we switched over here. And that's the sterile processing audience and surgical support. So like when people have procedures, anything from materials to the OR to SPD, but they're all healthcare workers and they have to keep showing up. What you said about that tenacity right there at the end. And right now we've had a lot of people leave. Because here's the deal, it's healthcare. And some people say, I don't work in healthcare. But you know who does work in healthcare? People. And people get tired and people have families. And people want to serve, but they're people.
And people are tired right now. I mean, I don't know what industry you are in, hospitality, it doesn't matter the industry. Right now, people are overloaded, overwhelmed, and tired. And a lot of that's coming out. It's a lot of that. We have a loss of stamina from the pandemic, from working at home and changing. And then we have the inundation of media and messages and change that we're constantly having to adjust to on the fly. So we have all that. We have, and then we just have work, right? We have life, and we have, loss.
We have people looking up to us. Loss.
There's been a lot of loss.
Yeah.
So, it's not a surprise that people are exhausted and tired right now, and especially in healthcare. I know where they didn't. Their loss of stamina is because they were so overworked during the pandemic for most cases, right? My daughter's in healthcare. So, and I think it comes back to optimal performance. In order to maintain and sustain a performance over a longer period of time, it requires an extreme focus of self-care when you're not at work.
Okay.
And I mean extreme. I mean, like it's whatever that is for you, whether that's, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever that self-care you need, it is not selfish to replenish yourself so that you can be at your best for yourself. And not just for your work, for yourself. Because if you're not at your best for you, your work suffers and your family suffers.
I know that. I work, I have friends, loved ones, colleagues, and for so long, listen, I'm in it now. I only have it for a few minutes, but I know this is crucial. For so long, like the identity wasn't so in serving others so much and like showing up. Like there are people I work with, and I experienced it a little bit, but not a lot of it. Maybe I've been through enough, but not a lot of it. But there are people who like they truly feel guilty. They feel like they are doing something wrong to have the self-care. And I'm like, no, you have permission to do this. And they're like, no, like it's almost like they're not a good nurse if they take some time off, or they're not dedicated to patient safety and SPD if they do this stuff that's called self-care. But I'm like, that's not sustainable. John Maxwell, diminishing returns. I don't care if you show up every day. If you're not taking care of yourself, it still is not going to work. And then either you're burnt out and you quit, or you make a mistake that you can't forgive yourself for. But just the amount of pain, I wish there was a word I could share that says what the anguish is that some of these individuals feel just because they need to take time for themselves. Like how do you help grown people through that? Grown people, like, I don't know. You said they look at it as selfish. I don't know if it's people pleasing. I don't know what the payoff is, but it truly hurts my heart because I know they need that time. Listen, it's okay if you need that time. We need for you to have that time, whether you know it or not, but they don't. And healthcare workers is a mercy profession,
It's a selfless, it's a service, right? But the thing is, you can't serve from an empty cup. You can't serve if you're empty. And I have a longer exercise and some things I do in a workshop, and I'll get people crying because it changes how they think, because they can't, if you are so busy taking care of everyone else that there is nothing left for you, then eventually there's nothing left for you to serve anyone else with. And it's really is a shift, and it's a hard shift to make, because we think, especially those that are parents or taking care of, we've got some people taking care of their elderly parents and their parents, and taking care of their young children, and taking care of everyone else. But the fact is, when there's nothing, when you are depleted, you are not able to pour into and fill anyone else. So it just becomes really more important than ever during this time. And I think the other piece of it is you've got to find the things that actually work for you to replenish you, right? So whether for some people that's physical, for some people that might be spiritual, and having that like meditation and having alone time, and don't be afraid to try new things in that to find what works, because what used to work, guess what, might not work anymore. We're in different times and different loads of stress that we're dealing with. So finding something that works for you and replenishes and refills you, so that you can both be at your best and be more resilient and confident and everything else, right? But also help other people, including your own family. So that all comes in here too. It's amazing how much inside work, right, is foundational to everything else, and being at your best for your family and for your work and for everything else.
You're right. Professional growth is not sustainable without the personal inside work. Elizabeth, I want to thank you. We're going to go ahead and bring it to a close. You've given us so much today. You've given the audience so much. Everything from getting into it, making sure we're not projecting our own biases. We got some nuggets in there that we didn't even know we were going to get. But I want to say thank you. And everything you just said, I'm excited about the book Fly coming out, Just Fly coming out, because that's it. First, lead yourself. Even in self-care, first lead yourself. It makes you it can only make you a better caregiver, healthcare person, it can only make you better in those instances. And so I just want to thank you. Everybody, please go and follow her on LinkedIn. Go ahead and do it now. We're going to wait. Do it now. Just go follow her on LinkedIn. Also,
so if they go to the storeyourlife.com, those confidence boosting strategies, I have those there on video.
Oh, let me put that back up then.
So they'll get those confidence boosting strategies I talked about earlier. I have 3 videos on there.
All right, I'm going to find that and put that back up. You guys heard it. It's
www.soaryourlife.com. So SOAR, like flying soar.
Okay.
Soar your life.
I think that is already in the chat box, as well as your Texas speakers is in the chat box also. But connect with her, guys. For those of you out there looking for trainers, hospital systems, Brian, great person right here. Just connect with her, Elizabeth McCormick. Bring her in. So you have soaryourlife.com and pilotspeaker.com.
Yep, 2 different websites. Pilotspeaker.com is all about speaking. So about the programs I do and what I can do in organizations. So soaryourlife.com is for my audiences, so that they can get the online course and get connect with me and more social. So Pilot Speaker is more the business side.
All right. Well, I'm just going to put it on here again, soaryourlife.com. And thank you too. I was excited to hear your story. I can't wait to hear more about your story, just in different areas. But you definitely spoke to me as a aspiring speaker too. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Luane's no longer with us. Everybody go to soaryourlife.com. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Forgive us for whatever technical difficulties popped off, but this is why we keep it live, because when it's all polished up, we've edited it, but life is not always polished. And so we're going to stay live. We're going to stay live.
We're keeping it real here, right?
Yes, all day. We are all day. So thanks so much. Y'all have a good day. Enjoy your Saturday, and we'll see you next Tuesday.